News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank, Docomo Pacific, island-wide, worldwide, the choice is clear. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Rigel and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Half a day, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Pacific News Center. I'm Clint Rigel.
And I'm Janella Carrera. Thanks for tuning in. Your top story tonight, Guam police arrest 3 more people in connection with last year's Bank of Guam armed robbery, just when we thought the case was already over. If you recall, 3 others were acquitted in the case. Only one, Jathan Tatautau, is still paying for the crime.
As word got out,
it has been nearly a year since one of the biggest bank heists occurred. While 4 were arrested last year for robbing the Jigo Bank of Guam at gunpoint, only one person, Jathan Tatautau, took the fall for everyone else. The other 3 suspects in the case, Vincent Santos, Ricky McIntosh, and Antonio Kirigua, were acquitted from the bench. And with Tatautau's sentencing last year, July, the case was considered closed. But not so fast. Guam Police spokesman Officer AJ Balahaja says this time they have stronger evidence against these new suspects.
Irvin White and Edward Baza as being the 2 individuals that entered the bank and robbed the bank. And you have Jackery, who is reportedly the getaway driver.
Balahaja tells PNC that Irvin White requested to meet with police. White was already in custody for the robbery of Days Inn last month. Balahaja says White wanted to come clean. It was at that meeting that White not only confessed his involvement, but snitched on the other 2 suspects as well, his father, Jackery White, and Edward Baza.
To confirm that his story was actually true. Given that, he identified his father as being also involved, Jackery White. We met with Jackery and interviewed him, and he also implicated himself as well as another person involved, being Edward Baza.
Jackery White was charged with burglary, theft of property, criminal mischief, criminal facilitation, and guilt established by complicity. Irvin White was hit with conspiracy to commit burglary, guilt established by complicity, criminal facilitation, theft of property, terrorizing, and reckless conduct, while Edward Baza was arrested on robbery and terrorizing charges, as well as possession of an unregistered firearm. So what about the other 3 who were arrested last year?
We have no reason to believe that those individuals that were initially arrested and charged with this case are actually responsible. We built our case based around the individual that said that these people were involved. It turns out that he possibly wasn't telling the truth in regards to his participating in the robbery, and maybe was just seeking glory. And then when it came down to it, he couldn't testify against people that really did not, rob the bank.
Balahaja says more suspects may be arrested. The 3 are expected to appear in court for a magistrate's hearing tomorrow.
Victims of the alleged baby puncher expressed their disappointment when suspect Yuhua Han was only charged with misdemeanors. But it turns out they weren't the only ones. A group of residents stepped in to help and started a Facebook page called Justice for the Children of Guam. PNC's Roselle Romanes with more in this report.
as word got out that the alleged baby puncher was only charged with 2 misdemeanors, a group of residents were shocked and concerned. Among them was Elena. In an effort to bring justice to the families who were allegedly victimized by Han, Elena started the Facebook page Justice for the Children of Guam. In just 1 week, the page gained 600 followers. Elena tells us why she made the page in the first place.
Trying to get people that are higher up to take notice, because little people can't really do much other than try and bring attention to the situation.
She says her heart broke when she first saw the video of 44-year-old suspect Yu Hua Han punching 10-month-old Alexia Esser in the face.
I cried and couldn't believe that it happened. Children should not be taken for granted, and it should not be misdemeanors to me.
She sends a message to stakeholders of Han's case.
People slip through the cracks all the time, just doing the wrong thing at the right time, knowing the right people. Don't let this go unnoticed. Don't let her get away with another act.
Han is being held on $5,000 bail instead of the $20,000 the Attorney General's office had recommended. Han's next court appearance is scheduled for January 14. Rosal Romanes, PNC News.
Tearful testimony today from the parents of the victim in the rape trial we've been covering. Francis Ju Taitano was accused of raping an 11-year-old girl back in 2007. The girl's father describes how he learned about the truth.
This whole thing has been very traumatic, so please just...
Would you like to take a moment?
Yes, I do.
It may have been a year ago when the revelation took place, but the father of the victim described it like it was yesterday. He says in December of 2013, he suspected that his 17-year-old daughter was harboring some grim secret when she became more secretive, and he was right. The girl's father says one night he picked up his daughter from a female friend's house.
And upon, trying to figure out things, surprise, I'm a lesbian, and all that, we found out that she had actually been raped by...
He says she finally let go of the heavy burden she'd been carrying for 7 years because he pressed her for more information. The father says he had suspected something had happened to his daughter for her to become a lesbian because she had never shown signs of being a lesbian in the past.
That's how I reacted. I fell to my knees, I felt weak in my knees, and I hugged my daughter.
Angry, confused, and distraught, the father drove down to the alleged perpetrator's house, Francis Ju Taitano, knocking on his door, but no one answered. So he drove back home, and when he got there, he learned from his wife that Taitano's wife was also involved. Even more shocked, the father drove back to Taitano's house. This time, police were there.
When I pulled up and the police were there, I immediately said, "Thank God you're here. Those people hurt my daughter."
The prosecution took their time to question whether the father believed his own daughter. It may have seemed like a pointless question, but the father explained that he had reason to believe his daughter's story because he was always close to her and she was never the type to hide secrets from her parents.
I believed it because of how I found out that she didn't tell me she was a lesbian. She didn't. She made it. She tried to hide it so much that when she said the truth, I knew it was the truth because there was nothing left to do after that.
It didn't bother you that she was a lesbian?
No, sir.
If it didn't bother you, why did you have to keep pressing her to find out?
Because it was something she was hiding from me. It wasn't, if she had sat me down and said, "Guys, I need to talk. This is my sexual orientation," then I would not have pressed it any further than that.
The victim is expected to testify sometime next week.
Governor Eddie Calvo has signed a qualifying certificate, or QC, for the new private hospital, granting them tax breaks for the next 20 years.
I want to acknowledge and welcome, first of all, my brother-in-law, Pete Scroll. Pete, you made this a crusade, and a lot of people thought it was never going to happen, and it did happen. So thank you so much for being the stimulus and pushed everybody to move this along.
Governor Eddie Calvo signed a qualifying certificate for the new private hospital that is currently under construction today. The Guam Regional Medical City will now receive a 75% income tax rebate for 20 years, a 100% real property tax break for 10 years, and a 75% corporate dividend tax rebate for 5 years.
Obviously, for some folks, there's some criticism because we are not collecting certain types of tax revenues, but also when you take a look at what savings there are in terms of people moving off island and having to have health care in other places, as well as cost savings and actually revenues to the island of Guam because this work would be done here in Guam. The benefits far outweigh the costs, at least in the monetary sense.
The qualifying certificate was approved by the Guam Economic Development Authority last year. The QC requires that the new hospital make annual community contributions, starting with $500,000 in the first year. This amount will increase incrementally until the 11th through 20th year, where they will contribute $1.4 million annually. They'll ultimately contribute a total of $25 million over their 20-year term. These community contributions will go towards things like health care, Medicaid matching funds, MIP, and public safety.
Aside from the monetary sense, this is just good for Guam. You have a new hospital, you have more doctors, you have more nurses, you have employment, you have rooms there that could again help assuage some of the tensions and the pressures here on our community as a result of not having enough hospital beds.
So when will the new hospital open?
We anticipate opening at the end of the first quarter or the start of the second quarter. We're really beholden to the construction company, but we're making good progress, and we're hoping that maybe towards the end of March or the end of April at the latest.
And Governor Calvo says this is only the second QC that he's signed since taking office back in 2011.
Vice Speaker BJ Cruz is questioning the need for the prison construction bill, and he's now suggesting that Gov Guam take a look at placing detainees under the care of the court system instead. Detainees are prisoners who are basically sitting in jail waiting for their case to be decided in court. Detainees who waive their right to a speedy trial can be held for years. Since these detainees are waiting on the court system, Vice Speaker BJ Cruz says one answer to overcrowding at the Department of Corrections would be to build a detention facility, which he says is up to 3 times cheaper than a prison, and let the court system run it.
I haven't spoken to the Chief Justice yet, but I think maybe rather than giving it back to GPD, maybe if I gave the responsibility of handling the detention facility, the judiciary would be more cognizant of the fact that they have 400 detainees in the system, and would do something about moving their trials forward.
As for the prison construction bill, the Vice Speaker says there is already a law on the books that allows Gov Guam to enter into a leaseback or similar financing mechanism to build a new prison.
All right, and Blake Watson's just about ready for the weekend, but first, he has one last sports report.
Yeah, okay, I'll see you there. Hey, sorry I was on the phone. Sports coming up. Call somebody, call a friend. Seriously, sports, it's not too far away. Basketball, soccer, things like that. Seriously, call a friend. Hey, sports is coming on. Yeah.